My name's Mary Howell, and this is my husband David, and we wanted to welcome you to our farm here in central Indiana. We first came to this farm in 1972 when David and I were married. We both grew up on farms, but we did not return to a farm of our parents. Instead, we decided to start our own. So we're first-generation farmers here on our farm.
The farm is currently being operated by the family. We're a large family farm. The two sons, they make the operational decisions, almost every decision. We act as counselors if they want it. We raise corn, soybeans, wheat, barley for malting, and tomatoes. We grow about 450 acres of tomatoes for a company called Red Gold and Restus. Corn goes to ethanol plants in the area. We're blessed to have about 5 ethanol plants within striking distance of our trucks. So we have good market for our corn, probably 50 cents better than it used to be when before the ethanol boom hit. Soybeans are non-GMO soybeans grown for an exporter at Portland, about 50 miles north of here. It's a premium product. Harder to raise, less chemicals to work with than the others, but it's something to raise profits a little bit with the premiums.
Everything we do depends on precision agricultural technology. The ability for us to make a living doing this depends on those tools that we have available to us, and we use them in every process on this farm, from the beginning when we start planting the next year's crop, to when we're actually putting the crop into the ground, to the fertilization process and the crop care throughout the year. At harvest, we're not just collecting the grain or the soybeans, we're collecting data that helps us make decisions for the next year. We realized the possible benefits of those tools early on, and we've started and invested in storing that data, collecting it in an organized manner, and analyzing it every year. And the power of that data becomes more powerful as the database grows, and we're able to gather more concrete or make firmer decisions based on that data the more and more of it that we build. So an example would be, before we ever plant a field of corn, we go back and look at 5 years of seeding data in that area where we have planted that field of corn 2 times in the last 5 years. It was soybeans the other 3 years. Those 2 times we tested low population seeding rates in certain areas. We tested high population seeding rates in certain areas, and we put test blocks throughout that field. When we harvested that field, the previous 2 years that it was planted in corn, we collected the information from the combine that said, we now have 2 years that say lower populations of seed in this area are starting to show that they're more economically optimum than the rates that we would have just used on a generic recommendation. That's one example of how we decided to do seeding in that area. Also, in that same field that year, we have applied nitrogen, for example, 3 different times across that field. 2 of the 3 times, those were varied. They were applied at different rates throughout the field based on information that we had gathered in the previous 2 corn years out of the previous 5 years, for example. And we knew that from the previous 2 years that we had corn in that field, that this area over here just continued to produce more and more bushels with a very efficient use of nitrogen. And as we've slowly started to bump that up over here, it just keeps paying us back. Whereas this area over here on the top of this hill, no matter how much more we started to give it in previous years, it wasn't resulting in more bushels. So we knew that we were wasting that nitrogen in this spot. We're able to take that dollar spent on that acre and go spend it over here. We're more efficiently utilizing that nitrogen. We're being more profitable, and we're being better for the environment while we're doing that. So as we're growing a crop, the data produced as we're making an application, the collection of that data and the organization of it is so key in the decisions that we make the following years, because then we can really guide where the nutrients need to be placed to produce the most bushels at the lowest cost per bushel and to keep those nutrients in the field. In addition to all the precision technology that we use on the farm, conservation's very important to us here as well. So we again use precision technology to do that. We're not over applying fertilizer. We know what the crop needs. We know what the potential is in a certain area. So we're not over applying fertilizer in the wrong areas. We're directing it to where it needs to be. We're employing the use of cover crops on over 2,500 acres. They have become a big part of our operation in terms of the ability to control soil erosion, to build the microorganisms that we need in the soil to release the nutrients that we've been placing there for years. A couple crops that I didn't mention that some people treat as cover crops, we treat as a cash crop, would be barley and wheat. Those have become a bigger and bigger part of our operation the last few years. We feel like they're a really good fit for our operation because of the ability to use our valuable resource that we have in the land throughout the other months of the year when it would otherwise just be laying fallow.
Since the 1980s, we've tried to diversify more and more, gradually had success at getting away from reliance solely on commodity crops. Primarily, tomatoes are not dependent on the Chicago Board of Trade. Our price risk that we have with corn and soybeans is completely different. It's a completely different set of risks that we have with tomatoes. So while tomatoes they have their own risks that corn and soybeans, the typical commodities around here, do not have, we're spreading that out and getting so that all of our revenue in a given year is not dependent on exactly the same things that our other primary crops are. These are an example of the tomatoes that we're growing for a company called Red Gold here in Indiana, another family-owned business here in Indiana. These tomatoes are bred specifically for processing and for mechanical harvest. This particular area will be harvested sometime late September, so about 5 weeks, 6 weeks from now. We've still got a lot of care to put into these tomatoes before they're ultimately ready to go. And these will end up we hope in whole peeled, stewed, diced tomato products, some salsa perhaps. If there's an abundance of high quality tomatoes here at that time, or if something happens to the quality of these, they'll end up more in products like ketchup or juice or sauces. So 2020 has had its challenges, obviously. It's been an interesting, strange year for the entire country and the world. From our perspective here on the farm, in terms of our crops that we have growing here, we're very optimistic. We've had a lot better weather in 2020 than we did in 2019. Corn took a huge hit this summer due to the stoppages in ethanol plants, and the price suffered drastically. A big part of our business is raising tomatoes, and a lot of those tomato products go into the food service industry, and that has resulted in lower acreages for us. We're also concerned about the processing of those. We rely on that factory to be running every day to process the crop that we've grown. We've started growing malting barley here on the farm. With restaurants and bars being closed, that obviously hurts the demand for, or the consumption of, beer in those restaurants and bars. The American farmers can grow plenty of those commodities, and anytime that we have a strong demand for them globally, it's obviously going to help the price and the price stability. We appreciate the business of our customers abroad. Their purchases of the crops that we grow here in the U.S. and in Indiana are very important to our farm, our family, and as well as our neighbors and the farmers that we are near to here in Indiana.
When people think about agriculture today, sustainability is a word that comes to mind quite often, and everybody has a different definition of it. What you hear most people talk about more often, when I think about consumers, they think about environmental sustainability. That's obviously key to us here on the farm because we grow our crops in the environment around our farm, and we need it to be as productive as possible. So I talked earlier about the cover crops that we use, the precision technology that we use to manage where we place nutrients, the data collecting that we do and analyzation that we do to decide how much of each nutrient we place in a certain acre of our farm. But that has to make us money for us to be able to do it. We have to be economically sustainable. And the precision tools that we feel are so key to our operation allow us to do that because they are collecting information that we can use to make key decisions, economically minded decisions, so that we can be profitable on our operation and we can continue to be here and continue to grow. Economic sustainability is often overlooked when you speak with people that are purchasing your product or consumers that you see at the grocery store. But economic sustainability is the key for us to be able to continue to produce here and produce the right way.
For all of our visitors that come to us from other countries that come to visit our farm, we always give them one of the plaques that David is holding. We wish with all our hearts that you could be here in person, that we could meet you and be able to give this to you to take home. So perhaps the next year you'll be able to do that in person. We can hand that out to you and for you to take back home with you. And thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your business. We appreciate you more than we can say.